It started with a phone call, one that sent shockwaves through a quiet English village. The time, 9:33 a.m. The place, a peaceful stretch of the River Wyre in St. Michael's-on-Wyre, Lancashire. A concerned passerby dials 999. They've found a mobile phone abandoned on a wooden bench near the river. The screen is still lit. A Microsoft Teams call is connected, but the person on the other end is silent. Resting nearby is a brown and white Springer Spaniel, damp from the morning dew, circling restlessly. But there's no sign of its owner, Nicola Bulley. It doesn't take long for word to spread. A search begins almost immediately, with locals and authorities scouring the area. But something feels off. There are no footprints leading into the river, no signs of a struggle, nothing to suggest that Nicola simply walked away. Yet within hours, police make an announcement that raises more questions than answers. They say there is no foul play, no third-party involvement. Their working theory? Nicola fell into the river. But how does a woman, on an ordinary Friday morning walk, simply vanish without a trace? Who was Nicola Bulley? To the world, Nicola Bulley was more than just a missing person. She was a mother, a partner, a sister, and a friend. A woman who had spent years building a life that, by all appearances, seemed stable and fulfilling. Born in 1977, Nicola grew up in Essex before eventually settling in the quiet village of Inquest, Lancashire. She was a mortgage advisor, an expert in helping people build their futures. She lived with her partner Paul Ansell, and together they were raising 2 young daughters. Her mornings were predictable, filled with the simple routines of family life. School drop-offs, dog walks, work calls. Nothing out of the ordinary. And that Friday morning, January 27th, was supposed to be no different. But Nicola was also a woman facing personal battles, struggles that weren't immediately visible to those outside her close circle. She had been dealing with perimenopause, a transition in life that had taken a toll on her health. The stress of it had reportedly led to problems with alcohol, something she had been receiving help for. In fact, just weeks before she disappeared, on January 10th, police and health professionals had been called to her home over concerns for her welfare. It was an incident that would later become a focal point in the case, one that the police controversially revealed to the public, fueling speculation and backlash. But even with these struggles, Nicola's friends and family insisted she was in a good place. She was making plans, setting up playdates, sending emails, and going about her day as usual. So, what happened in that short window of time between 9:10 a.m., when she was last seen walking her dog, and 9:33 a.m., when her phone was found? And if she had simply fallen into the river, why was there no immediate sign of her body? It was a morning like any other. Friday, January 27, 2023. Nicola Bulley, a 45-year-old mother of 2, followed her routine as she had done countless times before. She drove from her home in Inquest to the nearby village of St. Michael's-on-Wyre. It was a quiet, picturesque area, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that hinted at what was about to unfold. At 8:40 a.m., she dropped off her 2 daughters at school. There was nothing rushed about her morning, no signs of distress, no indication that this would be the last time anyone would see her as she had always been. From there, she took her usual walk along the River Wyre, her Springer Spaniel Willow trotting beside her, a walk she had taken almost every day. The path was familiar, predictable, safe. At 8:53 a.m., Nicola sent an email to her employer. Routine. At 8:57 a.m., she texted a friend, arranging a playdate for their children later in the week. No urgency, no farewells, just normal, everyday plans. Then, at 9:01 a.m., she joined a Microsoft Teams call for work. She didn't turn on her camera, she didn't unmute her microphone, but she was there, listening. At 9:10 a.m., Nicola was seen walking her dog in a field near the river. She wasn't alone. Other dog walkers were around. She wasn't acting strangely. Willow was off the lead just as she always was. But then something changed. At 9:20 a.m., her phone was detected near a wooden bench overlooking the water. By 9:30 a.m., the team's call ended, but Nicola never disconnected. Her phone remained right there, untouched. Then at 9:33 a.m., a passerby spotted something unusual. Willow was alone near the bench, her harness lying on the ground. Nicola's phone was still resting on the bench, still connected to the call. But Nicola was nowhere to be found. A peaceful morning walk had turned into something else entirely. She was gone. Within hours, concern turned to alarm. Nicola wasn't the kind of person to simply vanish. She had her daughters to pick up, a life she was actively engaged in. Nothing about her morning suggested she was planning to walk away. The police wasted no time. They classified her as high risk not just because she was missing, but because of what they called specific vulnerabilities. They launched an immediate search, combing through the riverbanks, checking nearby CCTV, and speaking with anyone who had been in the area that morning. Then the theory came. Lancashire police made their stance clear. Their working hypothesis was that Nicola had fallen into the River Wyre. They believed she had slipped or stumbled into the water, carried away by the current. But there was a problem. No one had seen her fall. No splash, no struggle, no cries for help. The riverbank where her phone was found wasn't particularly steep. The water wasn't deep enough to immediately pull someone under, and Willow, her loyal dog, had been found dry. No signs of jumping in after his owner, no frantic barking to indicate something was wrong. Nicola's family didn't accept it. Her partner, Paul Ansell, publicly stated that he did not believe she had gone into the river. There was no evidence, no footprints leading into the water, nothing on the riverbed. If she had fallen in, where was her body? The more time passed, the more questions arose. If she hadn't gone into the river, what had happened? Had she been taken? Had she wandered off voluntarily? Or was something else at play? The uncertainty ignited a storm of speculation. Social media erupted with theories. Armchair detectives combed through every detail, dissecting her last known moments, searching for a clue the police might have missed. Strangers began visiting the scene, filming themselves walking the same path Nicola had taken, peering into the water, trying to piece together the mystery. And as the hours turned into days, one chilling fact remained. Nicola Bulley had vanished without a trace. The disappearance of Nicola Bulley had already gripped the nation, but as days stretched into weeks with no answers, frustration grew. Authorities had scoured the riverbanks, sent divers into the murky depths, and used every tool at their disposal, yet the same question lingered. How could a woman simply vanish in broad daylight? Lancashire police had been steadfast in their theory. They believed Nicola had somehow fallen into the River Wyre. It was a theory they clung to despite growing skepticism from the public, the media, and even Nicola's own family. If she had indeed entered the river, why had they not found any trace of her? From the very beginning, search efforts were intense. Teams of highly trained officers waded through the water, methodically combing the area where Nicola's phone and dog had been discovered. The river's currents were studied, mapping out where a body might drift if their theory held true. Drones hovered above, capturing a bird's-eye view of the winding waterway, searching for any sign, an item of clothing, a disturbance in the water, a clue that might point to where she had gone. Helicopters circled from above, their powerful floodlights scanning the riverbanks in the fading evening light. But each day ended the same way it had begun, without answers. Sniffer dogs, trained to detect human scent even in water, were deployed. These dogs could pick up the faintest traces of a missing person, sometimes days after they had vanished. Yet, as they paced along the river's edge, their handlers watching carefully for any sign of interest, they found nothing. If Nicola had truly fallen in, wouldn't the dogs have alerted to her scent in the water? Doubts were beginning to take root. As the search intensified, a name entered the scene that caught the public's attention. Peter Faulding, a respected expert in forensic search and recovery, Folding and his private company, Specialist Group International, had been involved in numerous high-profile cases. He was known for his expertise in using advanced sonar technology to detect objects and bodies submerged beneath the water's surface. If anyone could find Nicola, it was him. Folding's team arrived with state-of-the-art equipment, including high-frequency sonar scanners capable of mapping out the riverbed in extreme detail. His confidence was evident. He believed that if Nicola was in the river, his team would locate her quickly. The public and Nicola's family placed their hopes in this new phase of the search. But after days of meticulous scanning, Folding reached a conclusion that left everyone stunned. There was no sign of Nicola in the area the police believed she had entered the water. His words were clear and unwavering. He had conducted hundreds of searches like this before, and if Nicola's body was there, they would have found it. "That area is completely negative," he stated. "There is no sign of Nicola in that stretch of the river." His assessment raised even more questions. Could she have drifted further downstream, possibly carried by the current into the estuary? It was possible, but unlikely, Folding said. The river was not deep or fast-moving enough to carry a body miles away in such a short period. With each passing day, Nicola's disappearance became even more perplexing. If she wasn't in the river, then where was she? The police, however, remained firm in their belief. They insisted their theory was still the most plausible explanation. But their unwavering stance only fueled more speculation. If there was no criminal involvement, no abduction, and no clear sign of Nicola having left the area, then how did she simply cease to exist? Adding to the confusion, the lack of any trace, no clothing, no footprints, no personal items, made the case all the more baffling. People who drowned in rivers were typically found within days, sometimes even hours. The currents would eventually return what had been lost, but Nicola was nowhere to be seen. Then came another unsettling aspect of the case: public interference. The longer the search dragged on, the more amateur detectives and conspiracy theorists descended upon St. Michael's on Wyre. Some live-streamed their own investigations, filming themselves searching through undergrowth and peering into abandoned buildings. Others disrupted official searches, convinced that the police were missing something vital. The speculation was relentless. Some believed Nicola had been taken. Others were convinced she had staged her own disappearance. Social media was flooded with theories, each wilder than the last. The police condemned the intrusion, stating that it was hindering the investigation rather than helping. But as time went on, even their reassurances did little to quell the growing suspicion that something wasn't right. And so, despite all the technology, the expertise, the relentless searching, the case remained frozen in place. Nicola Bulley had vanished, and no one could explain how. February 19, 2023. 3 weeks after Nicola Bulley vanished without a trace, the search had stretched across miles of water, land, and sky. Helicopters circled overhead, sniffer dogs scoured the riverbanks, and divers plunged into the murky depths of the River Wyre. Yet despite the relentless efforts of authorities, no trace of her had been found. Then, on that cold Sunday morning, everything changed. A man and a woman, out for a quiet walk with their dog, were moving along a stretch of the river about a mile downstream from St. Michael's on Wyre. It was an area that had already been searched more than once, but as they strolled along, something in the water caught their attention. Amid the reeds, partially obscured by undergrowth, was a body. They called the police immediately. Within minutes, officers arrived, securing the area and setting up a forensic tent by the river's edge. A police helicopter hovered above, monitoring the scene from the air. The search was over, but the questions were only just beginning. The next day, Lancashire Constabulary confirmed the grim discovery. The body was identified as Nicola Bulley using dental records. The news sent shockwaves through the community. After weeks of uncertainty, the worst had been confirmed. But instead of providing closure, the discovery raised more unsettling questions. How had police, armed with specialist divers, sonar equipment, and search dogs, failed to find her in the very river they had insisted she had fallen into. How could she have been missed for so long? To some, the answer seemed simple: human error. The reeds, the currents, the sheer difficulty of searching a river in winter, all of these factors could have contributed to the delay in finding her. But to others, the explanation wasn't so straightforward. Among the skeptics was Peter Faulding, a forensic search specialist whose team had scoured the river with high-tech sonar equipment in the early days of the investigation. He had previously stated with confidence that Nicola was not in that stretch of water. When her body was found in an area that had supposedly been searched multiple times, he was stunned. Faulding wasn't alone in his disbelief. Online speculation had already been rampant, but this discovery fueled a new wave of theories. Some questioned whether Nicola had been in the river the entire time. If she had been, why hadn't divers or sonar picked her up sooner? And if she hadn't, how did she end up there weeks later? For authorities, there was only one conclusion. In June 2023, the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death began. Over the course of 2 days, medical experts, search specialists, and investigators provided evidence. The coroner ruled that Nicola had drowned, most likely after entering the water at approximately 9:22 a.m. on the morning of her disappearance. The conclusion? An accidental death. No signs of foul play, no evidence of a struggle. But for many, the ruling did little to silence the doubts. The police had maintained from the start that Nicola had fallen into the river, yet when they failed to find her, her own family and friends had openly questioned that theory. They had insisted that she wouldn't have entered the water willingly, that she knew the area well, that the river wasn't deep at that spot, that she was a strong swimmer. Now, even with an official ruling, some still struggled to accept the outcome. And then there was the matter of the public's role in the case. From the moment Nicola went missing, social media had been flooded with amateur detectives and conspiracy theories. People had traveled from all over the country, filming themselves in the village, trespassing on private property, even approaching Nicola's friends and family with outlandish claims. When her body was found, it only intensified the speculation. Some online sleuths suggested she had been placed in the water later after being held elsewhere. Others insisted there had to be more to the story, something the police weren't telling the public. Lancashire Constabulary firmly denied any wrongdoing in their search. They argued that the river's natural conditions, currents, reeds, and changes in water levels, had made it extremely difficult to locate Nicola's body. Some experts backed this up, explaining that bodies in water can be hidden beneath debris, caught in underwater obstacles, or moved by shifting tides. But even among those who believed the police had acted in good faith, there was frustration. Why had the investigation been so chaotic? Why had officers taken so long to confirm details, allowing rumors to spiral out of control? Why had they publicly revealed Nicola's struggles with alcohol and menopause, exposing her private life to the world? As the inquest closed, the final verdict was clear: accidental drowning. But in the court of public opinion, the case of Nicola Bulley was far from settled. Even now, long after the search teams had left and the media frenzy had died down, the questions linger. Could something have been done differently? Could she have been found sooner? And, most haunting of all, was the full truth ever really uncovered? The search for Nicola Bulley had already drawn significant public attention, but in the days that followed, the situation spiraled into something far beyond a missing persons case. Social media became a breeding ground for speculation, with self-proclaimed detectives dissecting every detail, forming their own theories, and in some cases taking matters into their own hands. At first, their involvement seemed harmless, concerned citizens analyzing timelines, debating possibilities, and offering theories. But soon, it became something else entirely. Armed with smartphones, some individuals flocked to the area, ignoring police warnings and trespassing onto private property. They walked through fields, peered into homes, and even searched the riverbanks themselves, convinced they would find something investigators had missed. One man live-streamed his personal search, narrating his movements as if he were leading his own crime documentary. Another group was caught digging through underbrush near the river, claiming they were looking for evidence. The frenzy reached its peak when someone reportedly climbed over a police barrier and attempted to take photos near the very spot where Nicola's body was eventually found. Authorities grew increasingly frustrated. The Lancashire police had to issue warnings urging the public to stay away, emphasizing that these actions were disrupting the investigation. But the warnings did little to stop the chaos. Some individuals were even arrested for public order offenses, including one YouTuber who had ignored police orders to leave the scene. And then came the backlash, not just toward the so-called internet detectives, but toward the police themselves. When Lancashire Constabulary revealed that Nicola had been struggling with alcohol issues, allegedly linked to perimenopause, the reaction was swift and harsh. Many questioned why such deeply personal details had been made public. Was it an attempt to justify their handling of the case? A way to shift blame? Or was there something more beneath the surface? Critics, including prominent politicians, accused the police of breaching Nicola's privacy in an unnecessary and damaging way. Home Secretary Suella Braverman demanded an explanation. Journalists dissected every word of the press conference, and some speculated that the police were trying to discredit Nicola rather than admit their own failures. For Nicola's family, this intrusion was unbearable. As if losing her wasn't enough, they now had to fend off reporters who refused to back down. Some journalists went as far as showing up at their doorstep, pressing for interviews even after the family had pleaded for privacy. In a statement, Nicola's loved ones condemned the media's conduct. They called it shameful, they called it relentless, but even that wasn't enough to stop the speculation. And then, almost 3 weeks after she vanished, Nicola was found. Her body was recovered from the River Wyre, barely a mile from where she had disappeared. The police ruled her death as an accidental drowning. Case closed. Or, so they claimed. But if it was that simple, why had she not been found sooner? The river had been searched thoroughly. Specialist diving teams had scoured its depths. Experts had used sonar technology to scan the area, and yet, for more than 3 weeks, there had been nothing. No signs. No trace. Could the search teams have somehow missed her? Or was her body somewhere else all along, only to end up in the river later? These questions ignited a firestorm of new theories. Some believed the police had failed her from the very beginning, dismissing other possibilities too quickly. Others questioned if there had been foul play that had somehow gone undetected. And then there were those who believed that someone, somewhere, wasn't telling the whole truth. Even though the official ruling was accidental drowning, doubts remained. The police insisted there was no evidence of third-party involvement. But in a case that had already been marred by missteps and controversy, was their word enough? Had Nicola truly wandered into the water that morning? Had the river carried her away only to reveal her weeks later? Or was the truth still hidden beneath the surface? A mother vanishes without a trace, a case filled with unanswered questions, a tragedy that left a family searching for clarity while the public wrestled with uncertainty. Nicola Bulley's disappearance gripped an entire nation, not just because of the unusual circumstances, but because it defied explanation. The immediate assumption that she had fallen into the River Wyre was questioned from the start. No clear evidence placed her in the water, no eyewitness saw her go in, and most haunting of all, her dog was found dry, unharmed, and seemingly unbothered near the riverbank. Authorities insisted that drowning was the only plausible scenario, but the search dragged on with no sign of her body. Police divers scoured the river. Specialist teams brought in advanced sonar technology. Drones mapped every inch of the waterway. Volunteers combed through the surrounding fields and woods, hoping to find any indication of where Nicola might have gone. But the silence was deafening. For over 3 weeks, her family clung to hope, refusing to accept the theory that she had simply slipped into the water unnoticed. And they weren't alone. Experts in forensic searches questioned why her body had not been recovered sooner if she had indeed fallen into the river. If she had drowned, why hadn't she surfaced within days? The currents of the Wyre weren't strong enough to carry her far, and the river had already been searched extensively in the area where she was last seen. Then, on February 19th, 23 days after she vanished, a discovery shattered every lingering doubt that she might still be alive. A mile downstream from where she was last seen, Nicola's body was found tangled in undergrowth along the river's edge. A couple, out for a walk, made the discovery. They had no idea their Sunday stroll would lead them to the answer the entire country had been searching for. The police arrived swiftly. Crime scene tape was stretched across the area, and officers formed a perimeter to block prying eyes. But some were already watching. Strangers drawn by the public spectacle this case had become, crowded nearby, some even climbing over barriers to snap photos and record videos. Within hours, footage of Nicola's recovery spread online, fueling even more speculation about what had truly happened. The confirmation came the following day. Dental records identified the body as Nicola Bulley. And yet, the discovery only led to more questions. How had she remained hidden for so long in a river that had been searched thoroughly? Why had no one spotted her sooner? The inquest months later provided a cause of death: accidental drowning. But for many, that explanation failed to put lingering doubts to rest. Her family, her friends, even members of the public who had followed the case closely. Many couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. Some pointed to the condition of her body, noting that a person who had drowned should have surfaced much earlier. Others questioned why the police had been so quick to dismiss any other possibility. And then there were those who wondered if someone had placed her in the water after the initial searches had ended. Theories formed rapidly, each one attempting to make sense of the inconsistencies. Had Nicola been unconscious when she entered the water, making it impossible for her to cry out for help? Had the tangled undergrowth hidden her from search teams, keeping her body just out of sight until nature finally allowed her to surface? Or had she somehow been elsewhere during those critical weeks, only to be placed in the river later? The truth remains locked in that final moment, one that only Nicola Bulley herself would ever be able to explain. Beyond the mystery of her death, the case left behind a deep wound that extended beyond her family. It exposed the failures of an investigation that seemed to raise more questions than it answered. It revealed the darker side of public curiosity, how social media transformed a tragedy into entertainment for armchair detectives and conspiracy theorists, and it forced the police to confront the consequences of how they handled sensitive information, as their decision to release Nicola's personal struggles to the public was widely condemned. Her family pleaded for privacy, but the noise never stopped. The speculation, the accusations, the endless scrutiny, it continued long after her body was found. For her 2 daughters, there would be no answers, no explanations that could ever fill the void left by their mother. They would grow up with only memories, forced to carry the weight of questions no one could fully answer. And for the rest of the world, Nicola Bulley's case remains an unsettling reminder that even in a time of advanced technology, instant information, and widespread media coverage, some disappearances refuse to offer closure. A mother gone too soon, a family left with lingering doubts. Theories may continue, debates may never cease, but one fact remains. Only Nicola Bulley knows what truly happened that morning by the river. And that truth may never be uncovered. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more chilling true crime stories.